To ensure we continue to protect our interests, we need your support. Join the Titan Force now by liking this video and subscribing.
Attention viewers, this video is presented solely for educational purposes. It does not glorify conflict, nor does it encourage violence.
When Russian and Ukrainian fighter aircraft began clashing in 2022, long-range radar-guided missiles dominated the opening moments of aerial combat. But whenever those encounters collapsed into close-range dogfights, both sides relied on the weapon that has survived every era of air warfare for more than 70 years. A heat-seeking missile that permanently changed how fighters kill each other in the sky. This missile is the AIM-9 Sidewinder. It is not simply another entry in the U.S. arsenal. It is the weapon that ended the age of gun-based dogfighting and introduced precision-guided aerial combat. Across decades of conflict, it has been responsible for hundreds of confirmed kills and with more than 110,000 units produced since the mid-1950s. It remains one of the most widely used air-to-air missiles ever built. What truly sets the Sidewinder apart is not how many were made, but how long it has remained effective. Designed during the early Cold War, it continues to destroy targets its creators never anticipated. From high-speed jet fighters to slow, low-signature drones, few weapons in history have adapted so successfully across so many generations of warfare. To understand how this happened, the story begins in the aftermath of World War II. By the late 1940s, air combat was facing a crisis. Aircraft were becoming faster and more maneuverable, but pilots were still forced to rely on machine guns. Hitting a jet with bullets was becoming increasingly unrealistic. A new solution was needed. At Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake, physicist William B. McLean and a small volunteer team pursued an unconventional idea, a missile that could guide itself by sensing heat. Inspired by experimental German infrared research from World War II, they began developing a heat-homing rocket in 1946. The concept relied on detecting infrared radiation from an aircraft's engine. A rotating optical system allowed the missile to determine where the heat source was relative to its flight path, feeding that information into its guidance logic. By the early 1950s, the idea worked. After successful test firings, the weapon was named Sidewinder, after a desert rattlesnake that hunts using heat sensitivity rather than vision. The missile's brilliance came from simplicity. Instead of complex stabilization systems, it used small gyroscopic wheels on its tail fins to keep itself steady in flight. Early versions even used hot exhaust gases to move their control surfaces. Its warhead employed a continuous rod design that expanded into a lethal ring upon detonation, maximizing damage even without a direct hit. Rather than chasing its target, the missile used predictive guidance, flying toward where the aircraft was expected to be. This made the Sidewinder fast, reliable, and inexpensive to produce in large numbers. Its first combat use came in 1958 during rising tensions over the Taiwan Strait. Taiwanese pilots flying aging F-86 fighters were struggling against newer Chinese MiG-17. In a rushed and highly classified effort, the United States supplied AIM-9B Sidewinders and helped modify the aircraft to carry them. On September 24, 1958, history was made. Sidewinders shot down multiple enemy aircraft, marking the first successful air-to-air missile kills ever recorded. The weapon immediately proved itself as a decisive force multiplier. During one engagement, however, a Sidewinder struck a MiG but failed to explode. The aircraft landed with the missile embedded in its airframe. That intact missile was later reverse-engineered by the Soviet Union, becoming the K-13 and spreading the Sidewinder's influence across the entire world. Despite early success, the Vietnam War exposed serious limitations. Pre-war testing suggested high kill probabilities, but real combat told a different story. Against agile, well-trained opponents flying in poor weather and executing violent maneuvers, early Sidewinders struggled. Strict rules of engagement forced close-range fights, and the missile's rear aspect limitation became a major disadvantage. Hit rates dropped into single digits, shocking U.S. commanders and forcing rapid improvements. The Navy led the response by introducing cooled infrared seekers, longer range motors, wider tracking angles, and proximity fuses. These upgrades dramatically increased effectiveness. Later versions allowed the missile to be cued by radar, enabling pilots to lock onto targets without pointing directly at them. By the early 1970s, Sidewinders were achieving success rates approaching 50% in combat, a massive improvement driven by better technology and improved pilot training. The next major breakthrough arrived with the introduction of all-aspect capability. New seekers could detect heat not only from engine exhausts, but also from aircraft surfaces, intakes, and aerodynamic heating. This allowed the missile to attack from any direction, eliminating one of its greatest weaknesses: Combat quickly validated these changes. In conflicts such as the Falklands War, Sidewinders achieved unprecedented kill rates and became the dominant close-range air-to-air weapon of their era. Further refinements improved resistance to flares and jamming while reducing the missile's launch smoke, giving enemy pilots less warning. By the time of the Gulf War, the Sidewinder had firmly established itself as the preferred weapon for close-in aerial combat. The missile's most dramatic transformation came with the introduction of thrust vectoring and imaging infrared seekers. These advances allowed extreme maneuverability and off-bore sight targeting. Pilots could now fire simply by looking at a target, even if it was far off to the side. Modern variants added data links and lock-on after-launch capability, allowing launches before the missile could even see its target. Despite its age, the Sidewinder had become one of the most advanced short-range missiles in existence. Recent conflicts have once again proven its value. The missile has been adapted to engage slow, low-heat drones and even launched from unconventional platforms. Its imaging seeker can distinguish real targets from background clutter, and its agility allows it to destroy threats across a wide range of speeds and altitudes. In an era dominated by discussions of hypersonic weapons and artificial intelligence, the Sidewinder endures because it is reliable. It does not depend on fragile networks or constant external guidance. Once launched, it hunts on its own. What makes this missile exceptional is not a single feature, but a combination of proven design, adaptability, and combat-tested trust. From the Cold War to modern drone warfare, it has remained relevant without losing its core purpose. Born from a small team of engineers in the desert, the Sidewinder has outlived entire generations of aircraft and doctrines. It continues to evolve, not because it needs to reinvent itself, but because its foundation was right from the beginning. And that is why, decades after its first flight, it remains one of the most feared weapons in the sky.